la 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 la. A foolish thing was once a toy, for the rain it raineth every day. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Robert.
What is drama therapy?
Well, that was a taster, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We did a children's game, a clapping song. We did a fool's song from Shakespeare. And we did a bit of shamanism. We did the Rainmakers humming and sound.
Right.
So that was all a part of it, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Do you feel we ever have to define it? Do we ever have to really put a frame around it, or can we be very open about our understanding of drama therapy?
Well, I think that if we try to define it rigidly, it starts to die a death anyway.
Yeah.
It's a bit like drama and theatre itself, that each decade, each generation, each century starts to redefine itself in relation to what's going on then.
Yeah.
And certainly in the last 20, 30 years, drama therapy has grown and changed remarkably, both in the States here with you as well as in England.
Yeah. Well, where do you think we are right now?
I think that we've got over the need to justify ourselves in scientific language.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. We don't have to hide behind the skirts of psychoanalysis anymore.
Right, right.
Although psychoanalysis can inform what we do, and you've got Freudian drama therapists and you've got Jungian drama therapists. But drama therapy can be of its own. It can exist in its own right. And I'm very pleased about the move closer back to the theatre and to its artistic roots. And I think there are several modes coming out now of artistic models of drama therapy rather than psychological models. Drama and theatre and drama therapy grow out of dramatic play. And I think that play starts far earlier than people suppose. I think children begin to play dramatically before they can walk. I mean, I think Western mothers get very obsessed with keeping children very clean. Otherwise, you can notice a child, say, playing with food and taking a delight in making shapes or feeling the stickiness.
Right.
And, I mean, I had one very, very disabled child, about 2 years old, who wouldn't respond to anything, and he just sat and just rocked like this. And I just had, you know, my magic box of textures, and it was an eggshell that still got some egg whites left inside, and the eggshell got onto his fingers, and 2 of his fingers stuck together, and that was the first time he actually looked at something. And again, that was just a feel of something. And he then found he could make the finger come apart, and then he pretended they were stuck then. He didn't need the egg white anymore, and so on. And that was the very beginning of a little game.
Yeah. Well, we have a little bag here of objects. I wonder if you'll...
Sounds of marbles. Now just look what you can do with these. I had a very elderly, burnt-out schizophrenic patient, he was about 72, and he used to just walk up and down, pace backwards and forwards. And I started talking to him about games, childhood games, and asking him what games he played when he was a child, and had he played marbles. And his eyes just sparked. And I didn't have any marbles then on that day, so we just pretended, we mimed, picking up a marble and looking at it and holding it up and looking at the light. And he started to say what the colours were, and then put it in his other hand, and then we played a game of imaginary marbles. It was wonderful. It was just that little glimmer that took him right back to a remembered childhood. These are beautiful.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that people don't have a hard time understanding is making the connection between playing and or the memory of play and healing. How do we use the playful process in drama therapy to bring about psychological healing?
Well, you see, I think it's all there, if it's allowed to happen from the word go. The idea that we are born, I think, knowing how to play. And part of the reason that we know how to play is because then we've got a medium for self-healing. And you'll see children quite spontaneously playing out nightmares, playing out situations they find difficult, trying new situations, testing out roles and so on. And I think it's when that playing process gets interrupted in some way, say there's been major trauma, or the child's lived in a very restrictive environment, that play therapists and drama therapists then need to intervene to actually get that process going again. Because we, as human beings, I think, play right through to adulthood. We're not always conscious that we're doing it. But I mean, it's what I call reworking experience. When something has happened. I mean, for example, I didn't have time to tell you about my walk across Washington Square just now, and being slightly frightened at something I saw. But I could well have told you about that and taken on all the different voices and roles, and then the policeman said so-and-so and so-and-so, and I think we spontaneously rework in dramatic form things that trouble us.
Right.
And we tell them to friends, and we ring up our mothers and whoever's around, and then we let them go.
So is that what drama therapy is, a reenactment of feelings that haven't been resolved in some way?
Because I think maybe people that come into drama therapy have got stuck at some point in their lives where they haven't been able to rework. But you see, I don't think reworking is just a straightforward dramatization, because we don't rework ourselves in that way. I mean, maybe the...
Yes, and something else. We touched on theater. We haven't really gotten into it a lot, and I'm going to put my marbles down. And we talked about play. And one thing we haven't talked about, and I'd like you to talk about, is cross-cultural experience, and as it relates to play and theater. For example, here are two masks. Which do you prefer right now?
This one.
The Fool, right? Now these are both Japanese masks from village masks, of the demonic mask and the Fool mask, right? And could you comment on the role of masks and the role of cultural experience in helping one to understand drama therapy and how it proceeds?
Well, masks, I think, are such an integral part of drama therapy that actual mask making and mask use should be built into all the training programs. Too often it's just sort of left as a little extra rather than having a central focus. And I think at its most basic, I think you can help people to start to develop their own shell. This is for people who are very vulnerable, who are very fragile, who haven't got a skin, if you like, who, I mean, in psychological jargon, they've got, there's weak ego strength. And I think a mask can actually help people to build up an appropriate container.
Okay. How about even some negative feelings? For example, if I'm a very shy, withdrawn, introverted person, which I am to some extent, and I need to express my, you know, anger, demonic urges, maybe I can do this and scare you a bit.
And if I was the drama therapist, I'd say, all right, Robert, is there a sound that goes with that mask? Can you make that sound louder? Do you want to stand up and make it? Once more. Okay, freeze. Keep the mask in front of your face. But I want to ask you, now what sound do you want me to make while you're making this sound?
I want you to be scared.
Right.
I want you to be...
And can I wear this face to be scared in?
Yes.
that all right?
No.
No mask.
No, no. Wear another one. Wear another one.
What
Wear a
about this
scared
one?
Yes, that's good.
Okay.
No feelings in that mask. I want you to be very scared.
Actually, was quite scared. Right, you're Robert again. Not-
Okay. Yes, yes. So this is a pretty strong mask. It scares me a little bit too. I'm afraid of going too far with this.
So it's interesting, you can use the mask to build up layers of strength for people that haven't got them, and you can use the mask to uncover layers of that need to be expressed. So it has a this sort of concealing and revealing process, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah.
There was an interesting project I was doing with the people coming to the fertility clinic at the London Hospital.
Yes. I'd like to hear a little bit about that work.
And, well, in the main, people come to infertility clinics for high-tech medical treatment. And I work at the London Hospital, which is a big teaching hospital. It's the one where Elephant Man was, so it's got quite a sort of dramatic relationship for me. And I work together with the professor there, looking at the use of drama therapy in infertility treatment, but in particular the use of masks. And what I do is to get people to actually make the mask of their infertility, because so often they really cannot express how distressed they are. And to start with, usually the men create angry masks and the women create tearful masks. So they get into like a couple stereotype with these two sorts of masks. So I get them to role reverse their masks. And what is it like to feel angry as a woman and to be weepy and tearful as a man? And so often in that medical treatment, the men feel that they've got to be strong and support their wives, and their wives can get upset, but they can't let their feelings show. So we make masks of infertility, and then we go on further, looking at the colours, the shape of the infertility. And I had one man in the group who was a most unlikely person, in a way, to come to a drama therapy group. He was very big, tattoos, he drove an articulated lorry, and his wife was very, very feminine, very, very little Bette Davis, and big fluttery eyes and so on. And a lovely couple, and desperate to have children. And when I got the masks out and the finger paint, and he looked at me as if to say, "Do you expect me to do this?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he got into it and began creating a mask. Now, the interesting thing was that every time he made the mask, it collapsed. And he tried again, and it collapsed. And I didn't try to interpret it, I just let him go on experimenting. In the end, he took the mask home and wanted to work at it. And he came back the following week with a mask that was virtually all black with red lines going down it. And he said, "This is the mask of my fury. I am a very, very furious person." He said, "But I'm also going to be the head man of a tribe. And I'm the head man of a tribe that's allowed to sleep with all the virgins before they get married." So the mask gave him all these permissions that he was saying things and going into sort of myths and stories and eventually rituals that he couldn't have done without. They've got a baby now. They didn't need any high-tech treatment. But it took quite a long time of actually working at this dramatic level, mainly through the masks. And I think a lot got freed up, and what happened is that they changed very much in relation to each other. And she grew up. Because, in a sense, the little girl look was her mask. And she began to remove that, and through creating and painting masks, experimented with different faces. And then he came and said, "I've just realised," he said, I've got to mourn this little girl that's gone." Which I thought was a remarkable piece of insight.
It is,
I didn't have to do any prompting. And so he was able to mourn the little girl who had gone. But then we looked at how they could still be playful together. So perhaps the little girl hadn't disappeared, but in day-to-day life, she was a more adult woman.
Well, you know, when you were talking about infertility in general, I thought of the image as being very important to most traditional cultures, either a long time ago or perhaps even today. The image of the earth being infertile and needing certain rituals in order for the earth to blossom forth or harvest.
Well, like our rain man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually bringing the rain for the earth to become fertile.
Right. So, yeah, I just wonder if you could comment on sort of the ritual purpose of drama therapy, or how it can bring ritual. Well, you gave the perfect example with this fellow with the, you know, we call him a truck driver. But you know, perhaps was it the ritual aspect of that that allowed him to express some very human feelings?
Well, I think ritual's a part of it. I think that ritual establishes the safety. Because we know the ritual. Even if it's a new ritual, we learn it and we repeat it, and like our hand clapping, and like the chorus of that song.
Right.
We very quickly picked that up and did it. And ritual, for me, gives safety to risk-taking.
What is ritual? Can you explain ritual to me in a very simple way? What does ritual mean?
For me, ritual is a symbolic enactment. A symbolic enactment using all the arts, but in a dramatic form, that states and restates the beliefs of a group or a subgroup.
Right.
And it uses symbols that everybody knows about, that are
Right.
accessible to everybody.
How about that? It seems to me that restating, you talked about safety before, which I think is a really important part of it. The fact that it's done over and over again and allows people to think, oh yes, we know this, it's safe, it's a repeated action, such as, you know, the taking of the communion bread or something like that.
Absolutely, and the processions for weddings and so on. And you see, I mean, we are societies in the West that are losing sight of ritual very rapidly, and we're losing sight of them to our cost. For example, I don't know how it is in America, but certainly in England, the death rituals and burial are getting shorter and shorter and more, you know, conveyor belt. I mean, so what happens? We start having a new profession of bereavement counsellors, because the ritual hasn't actually dealt with the mourning and the grieving. And I think that rituals are built into life stages, you know, birth and naming and coming of age and getting married, having children, dying, and so on, the whole life cycle.
Right.
And they're like markers. And I think through ritual, you know who you are.
Okay, so as a society becomes, how shall I say, de-ritualized more and more and more, as we lose our rituals, we have more need for a drama therapist, really.
Absolutely. And I think that process could be reversed. I mean, if ritual and the arts regained their proper place in society, then drama therapists perhaps wouldn't be quite so needed as they are at the moment.
In some way, you and I are running a parallel course in that we both have seemed to come back, we both constantly come back to theater, even as we go out more, as we have gone out to the psychological areas, the analytical areas.
And I think we've both come from theatre, haven't we?
Yes, we come from
You
theater.
as an actor and myself originally as a dancer.
Yes, yes. But we somehow always come, I mean, I want to talk with you somewhat about how you came to be a drama therapist and where you are now, but you've been performing a piece about the life of a medieval witch.
That's right.
I want you to tell us briefly about that, and then we're going to look at a segment of that piece.
Right. Alison, The Story of a Green Witch, is a one-woman play that lasts just under an hour. It was written by my older sister, especially for me. And it tells the tale of a medieval midwife who was branded as a witch, and it's the last hour of her life, and she's in the prison cell. And she reflects back on, you know, how did she come to be branded as a witch? And she goes right back to her childhood. And, you know, her mother dying, and then her aunt, who was also a midwife, dying, and her taking on the midwife cloak. And the extract that I think I'll do is where she comes up against the challenge of the very orthodox Christian church, who didn't think that women should be midwives and deliver children and so on. So it touches on a very important historical time in the sort of early 17th century, early 18th, where women were not supposed to deliver children, and the medical profession was emerging and backed up by the Christian Church, saying that it should be the male doctors that should be doing all this.
Okay, we're going to look at this now. So we have a combination, again, of drama, infertility, therapy, midwifery. Is that
That's
what
right.
you would say?
Midwifery,
Okay,
yes.
shall we?
Yes.
Take a look.
Right.
Thank you.
You want to know what brought me here? Listen, and I'll tell you. Our good parson died of the plague, and in his place comes one that's young, fanatical. His eye is cold, his lip is thin, his voice brittle, like crushed ice. My child, he says. I could give him 7 years. My child, he says, this gift of yours belongs by right to the doctors and to the church. The good Lord never intended that his gifts be carried in so frail a vessel. For a woman, as good Augustine says, has no soul. Women are governed by affect and emotion, and in all things more extreme than men. I'm told you can read. Have you not seen what he's said on the subject? I can read, but this is not subject matter for women. Besides, not all would agree with the Holy Father, though I do not tell him this. Something puts me on my guard. I've seen his look appraise my ankle and stray to the curves beneath my dress. Oh, Tom, has it come to this? Am I the lust object of a lascivious priest? But he continues. Women are born to vanity, to seek all pleasures and lust. I cannot fault him here, but wonder that he thinks it only we. To stray from truth to falsehood, to be ever of slippery tongue. Now he gets to the heart of the matter. Women tempt, their bodies yielding sweetest fruit. All witchcraft comes from carnal lust, which in women is insatiable. Did I not know that though the devil tempted Eve to sin, yet it was Eve who seduced Adam?
Sue, that was lovely. I'm struck by the fact that it's a piece about a woman, healer, witch, pariah, outcast. Many of the things that perhaps you've experienced in your own life as a maverick drama therapist, and perhaps a seminal, the beginning person in the field of drama therapy in many ways. You come back to theater as a performer, so you stay within the range of drama theater action. In making that choice, where do you see yourself going in theater? How far away will you really be from drama therapy?
Well, I think rediscovering theatre in itself as a performer, as a professional actress, being available for work if there is any, is another big risk.
Yeah.
It's a huge step. And who knows, there might not be any work. I might be waiting and wondering and hoping. Yes, I've got the one-woman shows as well. But it'll be, for me, a way of very much living in the present. And one reason I can't do a lot of drama therapy work is that theatre work can just happen. The phone can go and someone say, are you ready to come tomorrow?
Right.
So it's got this immediacy about it.
Yes.
And I want to give myself at least the chance to take on any acting work that may be going in England or abroad, wherever, and see where it takes me.
Yeah.
I mean, I reckon if it works, I've got probably 20 years of an acting career ahead of me. I'll be in my 70s then, and that'd be no bad age to fully retire, perhaps.
Well, maybe we need to close now, and I wonder if it might be appropriate to close with a Shakespearean, a tribute to Shakespeare, a tribute to your new career, a tribute to your new midwifery duties of giving birth to perhaps more of the children of drama. how should we close? How should we close this experience?
Well, Midsummer Night's Dream is a play about fertility. And right at the very end, there is the blessing of the beds of the newly married people, and then
Yes.
there's that lovely closing speech of Puck's,
Yes.
which I think is very special. Perhaps the first few lines of that?
Do you remember the lines? Do we have to?
Well, should we try
Yeah.
and see what happens?
Yeah.
And if we improvise, well, that doesn't matter either.
We'll take the first 4 lines.
Okay. If we shadows have offended,
Think but this,
and all is mended.
That we have but
Slumbered here,
while these visions
visions did
appear.
appear.